What's going on, everyone?
Hey, what is happening, everybody? Welcome to another live stream here. I got myself. Yeah.
You got yourself.
I
That's true.
Yeah, I know. Hold on. Actually, I'm getting some weird feedback. Hold on one second. Hold on. I have a weird background sound. Oh, I know what it is. I have a stream in the background here. There we go. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Ian Robinson, and we're off to a great start. I am the Senior Master ZBrush Trainer, and joining me is Rodolfo Silva, who is the trainer here for ZBrush. Everybody say hello. What is going on?
Hello, everyone. How you guys doing?
Awesome. Yeah, well, hopefully doing well. So we got a lot of people here popping in saying what's going on. We already have some questions, which is great. So we will be taking some questions at the end, but the first thing we want to do is make sure that we cover what's going on and what is new. But we're really excited about it, so please hold your questions until the end, absolutely. And also, too, I do see that there are some different languages popping in. While I only speak English, and Rodolfo, you speak Portugal as well, correct?
Yeah, I speak English and Portuguese, so if there's any Portuguese answer question, just write PT or BR, and I'll read them out loud in English, translating it.
And if not, we'll try to get it maybe Google translated real quickly. It's always a little hard on the fly to do that, but we always try our best. So that is going to definitely do that. I will take this question, though. Where's Paul? Paul is off making ZBrush better than ever. So that's what Paul does.
Is everywhere. He's everywhere. He's with us.
Yeah. Paul's actually now a lot behind the scenes doing a lot of the project management for ZBrush. So he's actually the one who's helping with working closely with engineers to do things like what you guys have been asking for, i.e. we'll already answer this one out the gate. Z Modeler for iPad, when is that coming? That's coming early next year. We don't have a confirmed date, but stuff like that Paul's the guy who's now like who's helping with all that. So
that little feature called ZModeler, a little brush that we have on the desktop.
just a little brush, So anyway, real quick before we get into everything, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. Of course, as you know, that ZBrush is a part of Maxon, and Maxon has a suite called Maxon 1, which has everything that Maxon offers, as you know, from Cinema 4D, Redshift, ZBrush, ZBrush for iPad, Forager, Red Giant, Universe, the whole shebang. It's all there, and it's very easy to go ahead and get. Of course, all you have to do is come over to the buy section, and you can see all of our pricing, where that is. If you are a student, trust me, just like the promo had said, there is an education license for you. Just go ahead and take the maxon.net, the buy, go to the education license, and from here, just go ahead and pick which one you are, classroom, student, teacher, and follow those instructions as needed in order to, of course, get your license for a ridiculously low cost. And of course, that is regional, so check out which region you're in for that cost. And if you are learning anything about any of our products and we're not live like we are currently now, just know that over on Cineversity at maxon.net is where you can learn everything there is. And we'll call out to the most obvious one, which is ZBrush for iPad. Rodolfo, Silva, and I worked really closely to actually make this series possible. So, and it's always and forever updating. So as we get new videos, new features, all that stuff, they will be coming to this series as well. So this is a great way to check it out. And then, of course, we have a YouTube channel, and this is where some of these series actually will live as well. So they're a little bit easier to find if you are struggling to find it where it is. But like I said, it's just over there on the website, but also it's another location for you to find, which is just over here on the actual Maxon ZBrush YouTube channel. So, and then in the description of this current one, and that is a super bright screen, but in the description of the live stream that you are now are some project files that you can download so you can follow along or at least see what we've done so far with our project. So you just fill this out real quick, fast and in a hurry, and then go ahead and submit, and you'll get access to that. If for whatever reason you downloaded these files already and they don't quite match, just re-download them because we've actually updated them within the last 12 hours-ish or so. So that all being said, we got a lot of people coming in and asking some really cool questions. Yeah. Full house. Super excited about that. All right. Without further ado, though, I think what we can do, I'm going to go ahead and remove this, is Rodolfo, you have something you want to start out with. You want to share with a few things.
I do. I actually want to share something that I know a lot of people are excited about, which is no, it's not ZModeler. Sorry, I was teasing you. I'm being mean. People are being like, "Oh yeah, he's gonna show ZModeler." No, it's not there yet. But I want to show well, we made a project model that you'll be able to download, as Ian said, on the description down below. And if you can just frame me, I want to showcase. Can you just frame the single one? Yeah, there we go. So.
I gotcha.
I'm using OBS for this. So this is the model that you'll have access to when you download the project files. And what we've done is we've added on the ZBrush for iPad. So this is what I'll be covering. We're going to start with ZBrush for iPad. We have added a couple of new tricks, let's say, that to our roster, to our arsenal. And basically, we have two big items to showcase today. So we have a thing called mesh smoothness. Okay. So on mesh smoothness, that means that you can preview. You have this on the desktop, but we've added this on the iPad. You can preview your model to a higher resolution, even if you're in a low subdivision level. So what this means is that it's taking advantage of displacement maps. As you can see on screen, I'm on the tool palette under displacement maps. And for those of you who've been attentive to our YouTube channel, you've seen that we have added support for UV maps, texture maps, and displacement map, basically adding these palettes over here like we have on the desktop. So this model has UVs. I actually have two of them. One of them is a decimated version, just to showcase, like decimation with UVs. This one is the one with subdivision level. So if you go down here to subdivision, you can lower this to like the very lowest subdivision level. And then you can preview your displacement map by turning it on. But you can still see that the surface of this model is still very faceted because ZBrush is rendering let's say the lowest subdivision levels, like the normals, are being rendered polygon by polygon. So it looks very faceted. What we've added is this little tab under display properties that is called mesh smoothness, right? So mesh smoothness, you have to turn off quick 3D edit. And I've covered this on one of the tutorials that's just released on our YouTube channel. But this is basically a way, so ZBrush renders every face, every polygon with the normals facing straight up. So it increases performance. So you can actually sculpt millions of polygons without any lag. So if you turn this off, you can see right away that I'm previewing a smoother version of that model. It still looks kind of weird because it's sort of like rounding all the normals. So what we can do is we can tweak those values by changing a few of these sliders down below. So by the way, FYI, if anyone is wondering where I'm clicking or whatever, if I click with if I tap with my fingers, you'll see a blue dot. And if I tap with my Apple Pencil Pro, it's going to be a white dot. Okay. So if I slide down this D-smooth, it's basically changing the smoothness of those normals, of those divisions.
Hey, Rodolfo.
Yeah.
Could you turn the polypaint off just for a second, just so people can clearly see what's going on?
Yo, this is not polypaint. This is the texture, a texture map I brought in. Yeah, I brought in for substance. I can turn it off, but then displacement map would be turned it off. So let me just create a new texture. It's just a white texture, right? So at this moment, you're only seeing the displacement map. So for you to activate displacement map, you need to have a texture map in there. Doesn't matter if it's like a white texture, checkerboard, whatever it is, it needs to have something there. Otherwise, it won't display displacement maps. So yeah, so sorry about that. That texture is kind of like a very dark. I just did that in Substance. I have a smart material, and then because it's PBR, so here we only have texture maps. So
Okay.
over here we have the smoothness, as I've told you guys about before. So basically, you're smoothing out the normals, and you can see some of those edges are still rendering very hard edge. This is basically your angle. It's changing the angle of that smoothness. And then you can tell it, hey, I want to see like my subdivision level, let's say up to 3 subdivision levels. And you can see that's what we're previewing. And as I'm moving the camera around, basically, you're still getting that lower resolution. So every time you move the camera around, it's going to show you the first subdivision level, right? So it's, performant. So let me go up to like, I don't know, 17. And then this is the edge smoothness. So I can still have some of the edges be a little harder so I can preserve that silhouette. And now effectively what I have is a 5,000 polygon model that looks like a 1.3 million polygon, right? And I can have this and I can render this. And if I render this, I hope it doesn't take too long. Okay, I was tweaking that. So I'm rendering effectively a 5,000 polygon model, but it looks like it's, very high poly. This is particularly useful if you're using an iPad that's maybe not the most recent iPad, but it's still supporting ZBrush. But for some reason, you're lagging because your model is a little more complex or whatever. Just bake a displacement map, bring it into your model, and then just start doing your renders if you're up for that. So yeah, this is any questions so far? Does anyone have any questions? This is the first, feature.
So yeah, so no real questions on this feature, but real quick, I'm gonna just kick us back to this mode for a second because I'm gonna tackle a question that I think is super important, and it's just a little off topic, but it's relevant to this, and I'll show it. So Nezumi, is that all for the desktop version of 2025? I mean, I know you guys concentrate on iPad, but since I don't use iPad, I would like to know if there's anything more coming to the desktop. And I really want to cover this question because it's super important. And I'm not the type of person that's going to shy away from a question. So you're gonna get it. This is what Ian does here. So the answer is yes. There's a lot coming for the next versions of ZBrush. The biggest thing to keep in mind is that ZBrush for iPad was literally created from the ground up. There's a little bit of a misconception that ZBrush for iPad is a port, and the answer is no, it's not a port over. The engineering team worked hard to recode the entire thing. So yes, it took a lot longer than expected. And so for some of you, you're thinking like, oh, the desktop version of 2025 may not have gotten a few things, and in which it has, and we're going to showcase. And one of the biggest things is actually the next phase of Redshift, which we're going to be talking about, and a couple other things. And so we are actually making a lot of big moves coming forward for the next coming years of ZBrush for desktop and for iPad. And so now that the iPad is here, our biggest goal is, of course, not only to work in both ecosystems, but to take your project on the go and then to move forward with that. So there is a lot coming for this, and I mean this in 100% sincerely. There's a ton of stuff coming, and a lot of stuff you guys have asked for the last 10 years. You're like, oh, I really need this thing. Now, being on that team, we're all being like, okay, so what about this? What about that? What about this? Now, while I cannot give you specifics, what I can say is, just know that the ZBrush team, they are working very, very hard to make sure that we bring some groundbreaking stuff in the future to come. So yeah, if it might feel like there's a little bit of lull, but the reasoning for that is everything that we had to do. So I do want to cover that and take that however you want, but sincerely, this is exactly what we're trying to do. So I understand, trust me, it might feel a little lackluster, but at the end of the day, we're here to try to now bring you a new experience moving forward, because again, yeah, we're subscription. Those are things that are here. So therefore, we want to keep bringing that stuff in. And Rodolfo's going to touch on another one that is going to be coming as well, because we're trying to build a good connection with not only the community at large who supported us for years, but also a way that the community can now give back. So those are a lot of things that we want to do. I can't say a whole lot more on that, and I'm so sorry. I wish I could, but there are certain NDAs and contracts and stuff that prevent me from saying those things. But just trust me, this is something that we're going to go and move forward with. So thank you very much for that question. And Rodolfo, I'm going to kick it back to you. I just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, that's an important one, because I feel like a lot of people have been asking that question. Sort of like the ZBrush for desktop has had a few updates. A lot of them are basically game changers, but they've gone under the radar because most of the focus was on the iPad for so long, because obviously everyone was working. The developers were all working 100% to make that come to life. And now that we're on par, let's say we have both ecosystems working together, we can actually start pushing those features that we've also been working on for a long time to the forefront every now and then. We're going to publish them. So yeah, for sure. Yeah, like there's absolutely a lot of stuff coming. People have no idea. there's so many things. Yeah.
Yep. And I will say to this question, how about PLV? You bought ZBrush because of it? I can't tell you anything, but all I can say is, we understand. We understand. So there's a lot of stuff coming. That's it. That's all I can say.
I'm blinking towards the camera.
All right. That being said, you know what I mean? That being said, let's get back to the main features here. But great questions, guys. And I trust me, you understand. And we love the support. Trust us. We really do. So we're here for you guys. So going back to you, buddy.
I'm back. So here we go. All right. So, and by the way, just feel free to interrupt me, Ian, because I can yap.
I will.
I can yap a lot. I'm a yapper, man. I go on and on and on. I never shut up. Sometimes you might determine, but in this case, it's really good that I'm doing that. So yeah. So this is the number one feature. This is basically a game changer if you're using a displacement map workflow. And I know a lot of people in film do that. Like film is majorly like displacement maps all over, right? So if you're in film, you're doing like some tests, maybe you want to split your mesh or whatever, and you want to check out how displacement maps work, and you're on an iPad, or even if you're on the desktop, this feature is on the desktop. You can use this on the desktop. So the other feature that I wanted to showcase was related to masking. So this is something I used to say to all my students back in the day. Oh my God, did it crash? Yeah, it's crashing. Oh no, it's not. It's just a quick edit thing. I forgot to turn it off. Give me a second. I have to turn off quick edit because again, turn on the quick 3D edit. Otherwise, it's again, like I said, it's a lot of polygons to be trying to smooth the normal. So you want to turn this on once you're done. Otherwise, you're going to get like severe, performance issues. So let me go back. Let me turn off this displacement map for now. We don't need that. So what other features we've added is something that I always used to say to my students was there are 3 things in ZBrush that if you understand them, you will know the entire tool set, right? So it's way simpler than most people give it credit for. ZBrush is way simple unless you have to master these 3 things, right? The 3 pillars. Number 1 is topology. Basically, you have to master how to redo your topology, like all the methods, Dynamesh, ZRemesher, handmade topology, like retopology tools that we also have on the iPad. I've seen that question somewhere, like someone asking about retopology. I'm like, it's already there. The only thing missing is Z modeler retopology. Everything else is there, like Z sphere retopology. So if you master that, like decimation, all of those different methods of generating geometry, that's number one. Number two is polygroups. If you understand polygroups, you understand half the features in ZBrush, because most of them rely on polygroups. And number three is masking, right? And masking together with polygroups. So we've added the ability to adjust your masks on the fly non-destructively, which is really cool. So I'm going to show you that real quick. So if I go over here and let me just, increase my brush size over here, and let me just paint a mask over there. Let me just actually turn off symmetry. So I'm going to paint my mask right over there, maybe another mask over there, something like that, like 2 spots, right? So actually this material looks kind of, let me try something else. Let me try, the basic material. Is it? No, it's clay. Yeah, there we go. So that was a little tease right there. I don't know if you've seen that name of that material. Oh my god. Okay, so I'll let Ian take care of that. So okay, so we have these couple masks painted on, right? And now if we go over to our let me turn off my texture map as well, just so you can see the masking. So if you go to masking and you scroll all the way down, eventually you're going to find a new subpalette called the mask adjust. So if you open this up, you can see we have, it's pretty simple, 3 little buttons over here. So if I look at my mask, whoops, see, turn off polypaint, sorry. So if I look at my mask, and I can obviously sharpen this by Control and Alt tapping and blur it, right? But this is destructive. When you're doing this, you have to undo a couple of times to get back to what you were doing. Oh my God, turn it off. And now, if you go over to your mask adjust palette, you can just, let's say, I want to blur this mask to like, I don't know, 74 and apply, and it's non-destructive, which means that if I want to go back to the state of my masking, I can scroll back to like number 4 and apply. It's non-destructive. It's not incrementally adding that blur on top of the mask. It's just adjusting the mask, right? So anything that you do on this sub palette over here, it's going to be adjusted non-destructively, right? So we can also obviously access this little profile, and this is a curve like the ones you have in surface noise and in your brush settings, whatever. And what you can do is you can tweak this curve to your heart's content. You can just go over here, add points, clicking in here. You're going to add some points. Oh, whoops. Adding some points. Let me look at that. I don't know why this keeps turning on. So if you go over here, you can add some points, and you can change them from being like flat to being curved, and etc. So if I have this now and I click apply, it's going to start creating that sort of posterization effect of my mask. Oh my God, what is going on over here? Let me turn off RGB. Turn off RGB. Probably that's the reason. So if I go over here and I keep clicking apply, it's going to basically look at that curve and adjust the fading of the mask based on your profile, right? So if I reset that curve to what it was before, like 0.5-ish, like that, right? And you just click, if you click apply again, it's basically sharpening your mask, right? So basically what I'm doing is I'm applying a blur. And then if I use this focal shift, I'm offsetting that. Well, it's not really an offset, but it's like I'm deviating that center point. So if I have a regular curve like this, let me just do that. And if I push the offset, you see what it's doing? It's basically, it's not the offset, I'm sorry, focal shift. It's basically compressing those values on one side or the other. So if I have this, in essence, what I'll be doing is offsetting the mask. So this means that I can shrink and grow the mask non-destructively. So if I have this curve on the right side of the center, and then I click apply, it's basically shrinking the mask. So you can create pretty cool effects with this, right? And you can obviously just go, push the blur down to 0. And now you have this. And now I can effectively focal shift, push this like to maybe minus 0.5. And then as I'm doing that, I need some blur for that to work. And then click apply. Whoops, I need to blur it. There we go. And then go like this and click apply. It's basically growing that mask, right? So again, right side shrinking, and then left side, you're growing your mask, right? So this is just the beginning, basically, because we have all of these adjustments that you can do to your mask. And then obviously with the mask adjust, this is useful for stuff, I don't know, like this effect where you could just go, let's say I want some marble effect. That's why I painted on two sides, right? So if I go over here and start going crazy with my curve, I can just go crazy. I know I'm a little crazy already, so it's okay.
Yeah,
So if I
that's
go
okay.
like that,
We
yeah,
all are a little bit. But real quick, there was a question that basically said, asked if this was available in the desktop version as well. And the answer is yes, this is actually available in the desktop version. Just so you guys are aware moving forward, there are features that will be rebuilt for the iPad. And then there are features that will be exclusive for the iPad or exclusive to the desktop. So
right.
this is one that got rebuilt for the iPad specifically. So we're making sure that you know that it's here.
Yeah, yeah, basically that's it. So yeah, so I have this up and down kind of curve, so it's going to create that posterization effect. And if I have this, then I can start, applying this, maybe lower the blur to like very small amount like that. And then you can just go here on the top and go like, okay, I want to boost that mask. And now I want to adjust it again. And now maybe I want to, reset this and just Control Alt Tap. And then you're going to have this weird, I don't know, like virus kind of effect. I don't know why I would do that. But let's say I'm painting this and I want to just apply, like, let's just apply this color. I don't know, fill object. And now if I can flip that mask and then go, I don't know, paint another color. I'm just using very, very bright colors just so you can see what I'm doing. But it's basically going to create that effect. Okay, RGB needs to be turned on, obviously. So there we go. It's going to create that weird effect, and you can go crazy with these type of effects. Obviously, I'm just doing like red and blue because it's hard to see on stream if I do like actual marble and whatever. But yeah, so this was a feature that we've added on the mask adjust sub palette. This is something again that you've been able to do on the desktop for a long time, but it is there now on the iPad. And add that to like if you're using texture map features, which we also released very recently, like you have support for texture maps, you can basically bring in a texture map from something like Substance or whatever and apply that to your polypaint, tweak that using these mask adjusts. You can mask based on polypaint as well. So you can look at, you basically do mask by color. You can do all of that stuff and then just paint manually and adjust that texture and then bake it back onto your texture map, which is really cool. So this was basically the two big items that I had. We also updated Go Z. So if you go and click export, now you have the ZBrush and Cinema 4D Go Z. So basically, we now allow you to export to any machine that has a ZBrush 2025.1 and Cinema 4D 2025.1 as well. So the latest Cinema 4D and the latest ZBrush is going to be supported to get models from ZBrush for iPad directly. And I'm not going to show this at the moment because we're streaming and it's going to use the Wi-Fi. So the only condition that you have over here to use Go Z is that you need to be connected to the same network. So if you're in the same Wi-Fi router, you have a machine that has Cinema 4D opened or has ZBrush open, it's going to show up on this little list that you've just seen. And then you just tap whatever machines you want, and it's going to send it over, do the handshake via the Wi-Fi, and then everyone that has that machine open will get the notification saying, hey, this iPad's trying to send you this model. Do you want to accept it? So you just click yes, and it's almost instant, basically. So yeah, it's way faster than just transferring files to the internet. I can guarantee you that. It's at least 10 times faster. So that is the update we had on Go Z and on the iPad side. I know there's big things on ZBrush for desktop, but that's for Ian. I also wanted to show, by the way, something that we've added, and I'm going to go to my home screen right here. I don't need to save the project. And we've added a little thing. If you go to new sculpt, we now have another tab over there on the top. You can see over here. It's called the Pro Projects, right? And this is a collaboration that we have currently with Patrick 4D, but there's more coming soon with more artists that are professional artists that work in the industry, various different industries. We're trying to branch out to all the industries where ZBrush is in. ZBrush is in over, I don't know, like 12, 13 industries. So it's not just games, film, collectibles. It's way more than that. We're in manufacturing, we're in medicine, we're in whatever, right? So we're trying to bring in a lot of like professionals that have been around with ZBrush and also who are in different industries to create these projects. So you, the user, can break it down and reverse engineer those projects to see how these professionals actually made these projects, right? So if you tap this, you get access to, well, I'm in solo mode. You get access to this winter cookie little cute project, and you can see it's Patrick 4D. Obviously, he made sure he signed it over there. So yeah, so we have this project. Obviously, you can go over and you look at your subtools. You can see what he was doing on, you know, the actual, I don't know, let's look at the cookies. And this is actually really cool because you can see that what he's doing, I look at this immediately when I see something on ZBrush Central that has a lot of like this, I'm immediately going like, this is IMM, right? And this is, I would do this with IMM, I would do this with a VDM, whatever it is. And you can immediately see that this is an IMM. And we've added that to your current roster of brushes. So you can go down to your insert mesh brushes over here. And now you have this IMM winter cookie. And what we're going to look into is every time we release a pro project, we release an asset as well, together with at least an asset together with that project. And in this case, it's an IMM brush with a little bit of these items that you can see on the project. So you can actually just start sprinkling around your model. So here's another thing that people look at these meshes on the top with the mesh selector, and they think, oh, it has color, it has poly paint. That's really cool. Let me just drag and drop. Oh no, where's my poly paint color? That's because you have RGB turned on, right? So if you have RGB turned on, it's gonna paint or draw basically your IMM brush with the current color that you have selected on, right? So if you don't want that, if you want the default IMM poly paint information to come through, you need to turn off RGB. So if you turn off RGB and you start now drawing that that mesh on top, now you can see you have the color that Patrick designed originally. So you can start going a little crazy, experiment with a lot of things, and this is really cool. And this is really, really cool. It's something I wish I had when I was learning ZBrush, you know, because back in the day, it's like you reach a certain point where tutorials are what they are, right? You learn the steps, but then you're like, I really want to look inside the brain of an artist. Let's say I want to see how their thought process is, what they did on their project to achieve this particular result. There's multiple ways, as you guys know, in ZBrush to achieve the same result. So it is very, very insightful to have the ability to just look at a project from a professional artist and break it down. This is really cool. And also, by the way, this is an honorable mention. We have brush strokes with IMM brush, by the way. So you can actually just go over here and do what Patrick actually does, which is just go over and click cookie and go like color spray and just start going like crazy and spraying. Uh-oh, this is like maybe too big. Let me just
a lot of cookies.
Yeah, that's a lot of cookies. Let me just push this down and just start. Oh my God, there's a lot of cookies over there. This is gonna be you're gonna need to hit the gym after this. Look at that. That's a lot of cookies. So you can go ahead and play with this IMM brush. You can add to it and just customize it to your liking. Do whatever you want. This is really cool. And I hope you guys enjoyed this brush. I mean, I'm gonna enjoy it for sure. I would enjoy it if I could eat this, actually.
Yeah,
but you know,
absolutely.
but yeah.
And also too, that color spray, I'll call this out, that color spray information and stuff like that too. Like, guys, like, it's so cool. Just, you know, just watch those vertices kick up though. You want to get to 100 million vertices real quick? Just
Okay.
just spray. They'll have.
Let's go.
Not
let's
do
go.
that.
Let's try. Let's see if it crashes.
Do it.
Crashes. There we go. 4 million.
Go.
Oh Jesus, that's a weird. That's a weird. Let's have some fun. Let's go. Like, brush some cookies, maybe some chocolate chips on top here. Oh my God, that's crazy. That's insane. So you can see we're already at like 14 million and counting. And oh Jesus, that's too close to the camera. Let me just frame that back. Frame mesh. And we're already at 15 million. It's lagging a little bit, but I'm guessing it's also because I am doing this the wrong way, actually. So let me just go over here and let's start, pushing some more. Let's do color spray. Let's spray some more. There we go. We're pushing and kicking. It's going 20 million. It's going 20 million. Let's challenge this. Let's challenge this iPad. Let's go. And I know people are enjoying this. They're going to enjoy it. This crashes. It's going to be like, oh, I told you it's going to. But yeah, it's working. You can see it. We can actually go up. And for those who have not, attended the previous streams and watched the videos, you can go up on an M4, an iPad M4, up to 90. Was it 95 million per subtool? Something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
95 million polygons per subtool, which means essentially we can have, I don't know, like obviously it depends on your machine, and you're going to start lagging at a certain point, but the ability to just freely sculpt something that's like 20 million and then just add another subtool and sculpt another 20 million without it just freezing completely and crashing is just, an insane concept that a lot of people would be surprised that an iPad can actually do that, which is really cool. So the Dragon, for example, I always give this example, the Dragon that we use for the promo, that we use for our splash screen on the desktop, that Dragon was made entirely on an M2, not an M4, on an M2 iPad. And it was the first ever finished sculpt, I think, on the iPad, right, from one of our beta artists. And it's 150. Is it 150 million? It's 150 million, right?
Yeah, it's about 147 million and some change. Yeah, and it's definitely, it was made on the M2, like you're saying, and it is quite powerful. So, and while this is a fun, goofy example, this is just again showcasing that he just spit out 15 million different points of cookies and chocolate just to showcase that, look, it is possible to do that. So hopefully you guys really do enjoy that kind of scene and that pro project. That pro project, I'll show you here in a second, does work. It is included on the desktop version as well. I'm going to take this question real quick, and then we're going to switch over, which is, love the app. Only issue is GoZ on iPad hasn't worked, and I've seen others mention this. Are you guys working on a fix on that? So the simple answer here is, because it's over your own Wi-Fi network, there are things that we are a little unaware of on how to actually, like, if you got a VPN, if you're routing to dedicated IP stuff, like, it has to be over your network. So those are little things that I would say, take a look at those first and foremost. I have a pretty complicated setup myself on my home, at my home. So being able to actually, I had to kind of go through and just make sure that it was looking at my network correctly. But we're always looking at some of these issues. What I would say is put in a support ticket, because that is part of the reason why you actually pay for the app and stuff like that, and the subscription is that you get support. So please go ahead and put in a support ticket if you've taken a look at those things and it's still not working, and we can get somebody to help you out with that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, so we're going to move on to the next one, unless anybody has any questions first for Rodolfo about the things that were covered there, because we only have a few. We're here for an hour. We'll probably go over a little bit, because not only does Rodolfo talk a lot, but so do I.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that was something that was a prerequisite. So
you guys looked at the checklist when you hired me. You were like, let's see. Oh, he yaps. Okay, he's hired. That's it.
So what I'm going to say is, of course, we have a VPN. So if you have a VPN and you're trying to go Z, the VPN itself could be preventing GoZ to work properly. So make sure you check out all of those things.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So great job, Rodolfo. I'm going to go ahead and steal the stage just for a little bit. And real quick, I'm going to showcase the exact same thing. So right up here in the project of the Lightbox is actually the winner cookie. So I'm going to go ahead and click that over there. And as you can see, so yeah, same exact thing. Here's the pro project that is there, and also the brush will be there as well. So this is a really great, again, a great way not only to kind of give back, to the community, connecting with artists to showcase how they do something, and showcase, brushes and stuff that could be used, but also just the fun fact that, we have tons of brushes, as you can see. I mean, ZBrush iPad ships with over 200 brushes. The desktop version ships with, I think the number was like a 500 or 600 brushes, because we also have brushes up here as well under the brush system. in the light box. So there's always a ton of brushes for you guys to play with, but at the same time too, a lot of artists would like to showcase. So shout out to Patrick 4D for connecting with us on being the first pro project. And those are some of the things that we're going to be doing a lot more of. So that all being said, if you guys had downloaded the projects that again are in the comment section of this stream, you can go ahead and kind of follow along, or at least try this for yourself at the end of it. But I'm going to go ahead and open up the project that we'll be working on, which of course is the Homer sculpt that Rodolfo was showing. Great sculpt, my friend. It looks awesome. We're going to load this up. And one of the things to call out is that when you open up ZBrush for ZBrush for iPad, so used to say that. When you open up ZBrush and you open up a project or a ZTL that was utilizing Redshift, Redshift is turned off by default, just because, you know, we wanted to make sure that it was a purposeful render that you were doing, but we also have BPR still active. So if you load up the scene and hit render, and all of a sudden it just renders like this, then it could be turned off or on. So here we actually have it turned on. Cool. Maybe we updated that. But nonetheless, Redshift, to activate it, just come up here under render, come here to Redshift render, and make sure to turn that on. So this one actually might be turned on by default, which would be cool. The other thing that sometimes is turned on by default when you open up Redshift for the first time is using a default panorama. This panorama, it's just there to activate because you need light, but I would not use this panorama whatsoever. What I would use, and you'll see it comes with the project, but if you come up here to the light menu, and we're just going to dock this on the left-hand side, and you come under background, for many, many years now, you've actually been able to use HDRs inside of ZBrush, and you could even create light caps from that HDR. However, now we are allowing EXR file types on top of HDR file types, and Redshift will recognize those. We also ship with a bunch of these, and now this came out back in 2023 when we first introduced Redshift, because Redshift is in its current phase 1, phase 2 era, where we're trying to improve and update it on the fly. And so if you come up here to the light box and go under texture, and then as texture loads up, you'll see panoramas. And if you double click that, you'll actually see a bunch of HDRs pop up. These HDRs and stuff, we work closely with Polyhaven, I believe, to come in and actually ship these with ZBrush. And you also might see some ZBrush ones you might have seen in the past, but you can double click any one of these to activate them, or you can load your own by just coming under here, clicking it and saying import. And then if you wanted to come to wherever you hold any of your HDRs, you just select one, and then that would pop in automatically. This one actually has an HDR loaded in, but the background itself is not blurry. I don't like using the backgrounds of HDRs typically, so we can add a little bit of a blur to that. Okay, great. So what are the things that have changed with Redshift for ZBrush? First things first, we're going to notice that we actually do have a denoising right up over here. And the denoising section works exclusively at the moment with progressive rendering. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, and we're just going to kind of we're going to turn off denoising, and we're going to increase, sorry, not the threshold area. We're actually going to decrease the progressive iterations to really just show this off. And I'm going to brighten the scene a little bit because I was going for a little bit of a moody look. So we're going to kind of kick the light up just a little bit more, just so hopefully we can really see what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit render, and we're going to see what kind of render we get. Let's actually go worse. Let's go lower with this. And maybe here we'll increase the error threshold, trying to get a good scene. There we go. Okay, so it might be a little hard to see on stream, but right up here, this is not part of the texture. There is a lot of noise information around the eyes and any of the areas that are super highlighted and super white. So at this point now, if I turn on denoising and then re-render this, you can see that now all of that noise went away. So I'm going to zoom right back into this nose because that's where I'm noticing it the most. I'm going to turn off denoising. So you can see right there, there's a ton of noise information there. And of course, we can get really nasty and really kick that. Let's see if we can make it worse. There we go. That's even nastier. So that's where all that noise is. As soon as I kick into the denoising, It's going to come in and clean that up for you. So that's the first thing that we wanted to introduce, because again, we understand rendering takes a while. And I don't know about you, but I don't have all day to do a render. And sometimes I'll let things render overnight, especially if I'm making like a turntable or something. But we don't have time if we got to showcase a client something. So getting that denoising works out well, so we can have a nice clean render for that. Now I'm going to turn off denoising for a second, and we're actually going to turn back on the buckets, because I'm a bucket render guy. I like the bucket renders, and we're going to showcase now one of the biggest things here, which is AOV passes for Redshift. So AOV passes, super duper important. We understand in the first iteration of Redshift for ZBrush, we understood that, you know, those were super important. We need the shadows, we need the ambient occlusion, we need all those in order to, you know, put together our final render for our clients or whatever we're working on. And so now we've introduced those. And here, the way you can turn them on or off is quite simple. You just open up the AOV passes, which is a sub menu under Redshift AOV pass. You turn this guy on, and then here you can actually turn everything on all at once, or you can turn them all off. But what we have here is, of course, our beauty, shadows, ambient occlusion, subsurface scatter, depth, GI, background, bump normals, world position, diffuse, refraction, and reflection. So all of these AOVs are really important. And so when you're utilizing these, just go ahead and pick whichever one that you would like to use. I'm somebody that comes in, I usually use beauty and shadows and ambient occlusion, usually GI. Everything has subsurface scatter, but you don't always use it, right? We mostly use it for characters, but actually that pro project that Patrick 4D showcases, in his final renders, everything has subsurface scatter. So he just finds the right one. So, you know, have that active if you're going to utilize it. And then of course, too, any type of reflection that you might have. And then here you can see that not everything is, of course, active. So when I go ahead and hit render, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift R, and this is going to render. Boop. There we go, sound effects included. So there is the render, and now we can go ahead and see we have our AOV, I'm sorry, we have our ambient occlusion, shadow, beauty, we have global illumination, we have our reflection, and we even have diffuse this down here, so I'm going to turn that one on because I do like the diffuse. Let that go. Diffuse is really good if you want to add a pop of color, because sometimes when you're layer stacking in your final composite, like I'm going to show what I did in Photoshop so you guys can kind of see, that diffuse likes to bring some of that color information back typically. So it's always good to have. Let's see here real quick. We have this question here. Sorry, real quick. One question: are those channels rendered usable from render filters? Is the AOV linked to by AO sliders in the filters? So Redshift's AOV, as I understand it, is these are usable. You can use them wherever you need to. There's just a simple export, if I'm understanding the question correctly. But there is a difference, real quick, from ZBrush Redshift to Cinema 4D Redshift. There is a little bit of a difference at this time. So it may not be accessible or usable in the same way you might be thinking, if I understand where you're coming from on that. But this is really right now, the phase 2 that we're in for Redshift ZBrush is more of like getting good, decent renders out as fast as possible without having to exit the software. And because, you know, if you have, like, let's say you have a 147 million vertice model, rendering that is going to be astronomically a pain in the butt, right? So, but you can render that in ZBrush. This is the point of Redshift and ZBrush moving forward. So that being said, oh, I like this one. I'm just going to show it. Speaking of sound effects,
yeah, I was gonna highlight that one.
Yeah, you know what? I might take that one upstairs. Cool. So, also real quick, is this an iPad update or desktop update? We're showcasing both at this point in time.
I would like to emphasize, because I've seen that question a lot, and it's like, I want you guys to understand that ZBrush for iPad and ZBrush desktop are not, there are technically two separate applications, but they're both ZBrush. So it's like whenever we're doing an update, the goal is that we're updating ZBrush as a whole, including the iPad and desktop. There's no, let's say, distinction. We're obviously trying to bring value to both applications, because obviously there's pros and cons to the desktop. There's pros and cons to an iPad as a device, right? As devices. and we're trying to take advantage of those strengths of each device. So it's going to be a little different, but what we're trying to do is push for every release. We're going to have features on for all of ZBrush, basically. That's the idea.
Exactly. And I'm going to take this question too. I love ZBrush. I use 2022 in industrial work or industry work. I can't read. My apologies. I have to render another software. Is it possible to bundle Redshift and ZBrush for under $70? So here's a fun fact. The subscription to ZBrush alone actually gives you 3 products: ZBrush Desktop, ZBrush iPad, and Redshift CPU. Now, Redshift GPU is a standalone to either, you could get it by itself, which I think it's like $22 US a month-ish. That's US prices, so check your region. Which Redshift, just by itself, if you only got Redshift, that means it's now included in ZBrush, Blender, Cinema, Katana, Houdini, Maya, think 3ds Max as well. So you have that one subscription of Redshift opens up Redshift in all of those areas. And then if you have Maxon 1, of course, you just have it. So those are the ways. So to that question, if you have a subscription to just ZBrush and ZBrush only, you actually have a CPU version of Redshift already installed. I think you just have to go ahead and hit the install on the Maxon one. So you just come over here to your Maxon app, wait until that pops up. Boop, 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 boop. And you would actually see Redshift right there. So, but again, for the $22 a month for Redshift in those 7 different applications, if you use any one of those, then yeah. And there are plans, by the way, too. I'll say this pretty loosely. There are plans, of course, to get the materials acting so that it all makes sense in the long run. So we're always thinking about these things as we move forward, and this is something that's going on. So fun facts. Okay, cool. Moving on forward with that. Now that you have these AOV passes, what do we do with them? Well, first and foremost is that, of course, you can either just come over here and click on one and go ahead and do your normal saving that you would do. We have JPEG, Photoshop files, PNG, bitmaps, and TIFFs. So you can go ahead and change those. For the beauty pass, you could also come up here to document and hit export just like you would in the past. And then let's just call this, test for now. I'll go ahead and hit save. And then you'd still be presented with this screen if you're doing a JPEG. I personally like to use Photoshop files or TIFF files. I know they're larger, but they allow more to that. And it gives you a little bit more of that, a little bit more flexibility in the editing software. So that's something I like to do. JPEGs are like a little bit too compressed to me. But again, if you're using JPEG for your just main beauty pass, that's totally fine. And then you would just go ahead and hit OK, and then that's X. You can, again, coming over here, you could just say, like, look, I have for AOV, I have EXR or TIFF files. So you just pick the one that you want and then save that wherever you need to, and then you'd be good to go. And you just click every single one of those that you want. I will say this right now, that I know some of you might already ask, so I'll just call it out. The ZBrush to Photoshop, this one right now is BPR friendly only, but conversations and stuff like that, we're thinking about like, oh, could we do this for Redshift as well? So we're always trying to think of like easy or faster ways to do stuff. So conversations and stuff like that. So again, all the things that you guys have been asking for in the past, we're trying to keep that in the back of our head as we move forward. And of course, we'll share it as soon as we can. So that all being said, now that I have this, I did see it earlier in the chat and I don't remember where it is. Somebody asked about BPR filters and is it possible to use on top of Redshift? Absolutely. Right. And all you need to do is once you get your render, so let me re-render this real fast. And once the render is set and it's good to go, boop. All right, just come on down to our BPR filters. And here you can go ahead and you could say like, oh, I want a radial overlay pass. There we go. Go here, maybe expand the fall off a little bit. Maybe adjust that, get that a little bit more focused, sharpen this up a little bit. I like Orton, brighten the scene a little bit more. I can do that. Oh, you know what? Actually, I need a little bit more contrast for this too. So let me go ahead and adjust it. Boom, done. Like now you really got something that looks super cool. And then you can render that out. And if you are also wondering, yes, absolutely, you can use Redshift for movie passes. I actually have this guy right here. So I rendered this last night. to showcase that you can even use Redshift in your turntables and just let that go ahead and render that out. So absolutely super cool. So how did I go ahead and, you know, composite all this together? I didn't use BPR filters in this example, but if we go into Photoshop, and again, you have this in the downloadable, so you guys can come in and play and see how I work. I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the final look, turn off the adjustment layers because I like to do a few things, and I'll explain that in a minute. But then here are the AOV passes that I was working with. So of course, we'll just start from the base and we'll just kind of cookie show this a little bit. I brought in my beauty pass, super cool, a little dark, no big deal, but I was like kind of moody and, you know, being an artist, me being me, I was like, this looks cool. And then I went ahead and I brought in my shadows. Now I will say this, and I'm just going to call it out so you guys know, and it's expected. But if I come into and I grab my shadows, so let's say I grab this guy, throw this on, say yeah, shadows comes in inverted. So immediately just Control or Command I, reinvert that, and then go ahead and turn multiply on. And there you go, you got your shadow pass on. So some of these might come inverted. If they look a little weird, just try to invert the pass and easy peasy lemon squeezy. So I went ahead and did that. So I had my shadows. I also tend to adjust my opacity. I leave everything at like 100% when I throw it on and get it looking the way it should. And then I adjust accordingly. But I did adjust this one to a little over 60%. And then it brought in my ambient occlusion. And as you can see, things are getting a little bit dark. So then I brought in to diffuse, again, bringing back some of that color and that light interaction. And then I also brought in a reflection. And then I was like, okay, cool. So again, with reflection, I usually use lighten. With diffuse, I usually use color dodge. With my ambient occlusion and shadows, I usually use multiply. But I always encourage people, when you're coming to blend modes, play around. You know, you might actually accidentally discover a different look or a different feel. Nothing is ever set in stone in the world of being creative. And as long as you guys know me and I'm preaching this from the rooftop, that's always my standpoint. Just come in and play around because you never know what you're going to find. Like darker color actually looks pretty cool. So does it do anything? We'll turn it off, turn it on. Yeah, it does it a little bit. So little things like that, always like kind of just play around and see if you find something that looks good for you. And then if you open up my adjustment layers, I just added a curves and a level adjustment because it was too dark. And, you know, the whole point of sculpting something is to showcase it. You know, that's something. And then from there, I went ahead and I brought in a high pass filter. And then I also brought in a little bit of a vignette. And again, you know, maybe now looking at this as I look at this literally the next day, I'm like, hey, maybe this actually could use a little bit more of a curve adjustments. There you go. Now you guys can see a bit more. So just a nice little way to go ahead and do that. Come in and see what's going on. So this is actually the Photoshop file. You can come in and play around. And that's how you would use those AOV passes. Very cool.
So I have a question here about a depth of field. Does it also affect those channels? Let me just put that on.
Yeah, so we do have a depth field. Yeah, so if you are using depth of field, we do have a depth channel, and then that should also populate. So then you can use that, and however you use that depth in Photoshop or whatever software you're using to composite the finals, absolutely. So every time you render, as long as it's checked and you have depth, it will go ahead and do a depth one. I don't have any depth information on here, but the way you could be able to do depth is actually, if you come up here to our render, there's a couple ways. There's a depth of fields that you could turn this on down here, and you can literally click and pick a spot. So typically eyes are the #1 spot you should be focusing on when we're talking about faces of any kind. So I'm going to pick that spot, and then I'm going to increase the radius a bit. And just for the fun of it, we're going to go really nasty. So let's just really get nuts. You want to get nuts?
Yeah, let's get nuts.
So let's really get blurry. And as you can see here, there you would have that, and it's rendering. And if I clicked depth, I should have that information. And I go to AOV passes, and now I have a depth pass. Now, some of them may not give you a quick visual of what that would look like, so just save that out and put that in your scene. I noticed like subsurface adder doesn't always, but then it brings that information when it's there. Right now, it doesn't really have any. And just for those who are asking, any material you have with Redshift, if you come up here to material, come up here to modifiers, here you'll see where everything is on. So you'll want to make sure that some of these are turned on properly when you're engaging and setting it up. So here, like I could, subsurface mode is turned to 0, which means it's just using its base one. Mode number 2 is the most realistic, but then subsurface amount is set to 0. So even though it's recognizing that I'm turning on subsurface scatter and it's rendering, it's trying to render a pass, if there's absolutely no information there, then it's not going to. But here, if I kick up this information, so let's just kick that up quite a bit. I'm going to go ahead and hit render. And let's come back down here and make sure subsurface is turned on. So rend AOV passes. Yep, it's turned on. Great. I'm going to go ahead and hit render on that. And now this will probably take a little bit more time, but then we should get a subsurface scatter approach. So as long as it's turned on and your material accepts it, it should be good to go. Yep, there you go. Oh, cool. And it's actually showcasing some info. And then you just bring that into your thing.
Yep. So we have basically, I don't know if this was mentioned, but it should be mentioned. If you're new to the Redshift at all, one of the things we've updated was the actual terms, right? The terms are the Redshift terms now, and not the material. In the material, if you're tweaking the material for some reason, and you always go back and forth, right, between light and materials and all of that. We just, basically updated that. And if you are wondering, there's a feature in ZBrush that if you hold Control and you hover over a feature, it will show you like a little description. For Redshift, however, you have to check in the Redshift documentation, because it's not a ZBrush thing, it's a Redshift, right? So you need to check out the actual Redshift PBR documentation, so to figure out whatever little button does or term does. If you're brand new, right, to Redshift and rendering, right?
Yeah.
I was just wanted to shout that out, because I think that might be important for people who are not used to, rendering in terms and rendering.
Yep, absolutely. And to this question, as far as I understand, no, the depth of field should not affect the ambient occlusion pass on that. So if I hover over this, yeah, it does not look like, it looks pretty sharp to me. So no, it should not affect that. But I will double check that myself. In fact, let's just do it live, because that's how we do things here. I'm going to go ahead and re-render this real fast, just so I know I have the latest one with that depth information. I'm just going to export the ambient occlusion, throw it into Photoshop real quick, and that will give you that info. It shouldn't. It should be separate. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, that's fine. Let's just do that here in the what's new. Sounds great. Let's move back over to Photoshop, and I'm just going to go ahead and close this one out. Say no. Let me just come in here. What's new? Where are we at? The right one. There it is. Let me just drag and drop that guy. That's fine. Yeah, no, it's pretty sharp. So there it is.
Yeah.
Came in red because I said to have transparency. That was, nope. All right. So yeah, no, it does not affect it, which I thought it didn't. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So honestly, those are like the really, really big ones in this last update. There are some bug fixes and stuff that has happened. What I'm going to do as well, because we are running out of time, is that there is a documentation page that actually showcases where everything has been. And I want to put that in the chat right now, because again, there's a lot of comments I see like, oh my God, there's nothing new has happened and stuff like that. There's a ton of stuff that has happened. And obviously we can't cover everything in the stream, but that will send you to the latest documentation, and you can see what's going on first and foremost. And like the stuff that Rodolfo showed as well, we have a mask adjust. There is the actual, here's the mask adjust itself. He already went over how all the stuff is, but again, it's been here, so you can utilize that feature as well. So things like that have been there this whole time. Very, very cool. That all being said, guys, we are going to go ahead and wrap it up here. But thank you guys very much for everything. Like, seriously, we wanted to go over all the stuff that is new, what's happening. Again, ZBrush for iPad being the latest thing here for the Maxon family. And of course, there's a lot more to come, not only with the ZBrush side of things, but desktop, but also for the iPad. And Maxon One is a suite. And we're going to have a lot of conversations about the pipelines and stuff moving into the Maxon One ecosystem, like again, moving into Cinema 4D, utilizing Redshift. You guys, if you have a Maxon 1, you have access to all of this stuff. And if you have just a ZBrush subscription, you could do the Redshift and you can play with these passes, the denoising, etc. And again, we also offered a little bit more customizability, to be able to, again, subsurface scattering here with the secondary visibility, global illumination, depth, like more options for the stuff. Oh, there was one thing actually I almost forgot to mention. So that's also why I kicked it up. And this one is super important. If you've been using Redshift and ZBrush before this release, you actually already kind of know where I'm going with this one. But it's been quite interesting, we'll say, I picked a sphere. Can we pick something else, Ian? Yeah, let's go ahead. You know what? Actually, let's do this. Let's pull up. I'm going to pull up Earthquake. Let's set up a scene real fast together. Here, if you've actually been using Redshift for some time, then you might actually know that getting a light set up here is sometimes a little bit difficult. You're like kind of guessing where the HDR would be. So let's pop that over there. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and actually lower this color information. And it's going to update. And you might be saying, oh, that took a second. Yeah, it's because it's updating. So let me make sure that Redshift is turned on, which it is. I'm going to pick a floor material. I'm going to make sure the floor is on. Okay, great. Now, of course, he's looking fairly dark right now. So coming back to that light information up here at the top, and we're going to go here to our background. Like I said earlier, right, the default panorama, it's fine. It's not that great. It's not my personal favorite. So we're going to pick a new one. So I'm going to come in here to texture, and I'm going to import something that maybe I do like. So I have a few over here, and I'm just going to go ahead and pick this guy. Let that load in. Now, once this loads in, it's going to take some time, and it's going to be updating the material. And that, fun, great, cool. Crash. Everything crashes, guys. And I'm streaming too, which is super fun. It happens.
Oh, wow.
I can't tell you. I don't think there's a piece of software that's never
it wouldn't be a
it.
party without a crash.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody told me once, you're not demoing correctly if you don't break the software.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and do this.
When you go to a party, there's always someone that breaks a glass. So it's the same thing. It's not a party if there's no crash.
Exactly. Oh yeah, I'll also cover the anchor brush. Thank you for asking that question. Yeah. All right, so let's try this again. And just for the sake of fun and stuff like that, let's just keep it simple. Let's just go ahead. I just wanted to showcase this. Let's just grab a normal head. Okay, so here, let's turn on Redshift. Let's go ahead and pop this over. Bada bing, bada boom, Redshift. Great, wonderful. Turn that guy off. And then let's go ahead and give it a Redshift material. So let's call it, let's not hurt ourselves here. Let's just go aluminum. Let that pop up for a second. There we go. Got some aluminum. Come here with the lights. All right. So with the HDR, let's turn on the default. So let's come up here to our texture, like I mentioned before. And let's go ahead and go panoramas. And let's pick one of my favorite ones. I don't know why this one is my favorite one. I guess it just always looked pretty good, but it's this last one over here.
Really?
So I'm going to double click that guy, have that come over here. So the fun part is I'm going to blur this just a little bit. But here's the thing. So looking at the information on the actual material itself, and I'm going to turn this light down here at the top. It's now going to be updating in real time. Well, not real time, but it's like every time there's a change to the light, it's going to now adjust for you. It's going to take a second, and then it's going to adjust. So this way you're not guessing what light information you're getting. So you can kind of like rotate it and see. This is more of a quality of life one, of course, as we understand, but it's just helpful so you're not sitting here thinking like, how do I do, quote, a thing? Like, what's the light looking like? This is something that we wanted to update with that. So that is something that is there. Okay, cool. So anything you're updating, of course, if I'm turning off a light and then turning on another light. So again, this might seem very simple, but at the end of the day, it's something that's like, hey, this is actually very useful, and it's a quality of life that I really, really like. Very cool. And then last but not least, yes, the anchor brush. iPad Scale Master, I just see that question. There are a lot of plugins actually that we are looking at bringing to the iPad. But again, like I mentioned earlier, and if you weren't here for that, I'll reiterate it. ZBrush for iPad is not a port, it's a rebuild. It's built from the ground up, which is why it took a while. And there's a lot of resources put into that. So every plugin that we do, we have to go and actually rebuild that. So those are things that we're looking into. And like I said, I can't give you specifics on what, when, why, and how we're building, but those are things we're looking at. Awesome. Very cool. Okay, so now I'm going to turn this guy off here. Well, not turn it off, but I'm going to go ahead and pick a different material. Let's pick something like startup, and let's turn this light on. Actually, here, let's do this. I'm going to showcase this with the dog. This will be the last little thing we do for this. So the anchor brush, the new update for the anchor brush. So we have a couple brushes now. So if we come up here to brush, you can see there's Anchor Classic and, of course, anchors. And the biggest thing right now is the bend. So with the bend, again, in the past, a lot of times, like what would happen was that when something would bend, it would actually deform everything that is around it. And here, do I have symmetry turned on? I do not yet. So when I go ahead and pull this, it's only going to be affecting that local area. So it's a much better improved tool. So you can sit here, click this, click that, and you can start getting this bend here. And of course, the closer things are, the sharper you might see things. The further things are, it's going to be a little bit more of a softer one. So the bend tool, this is actually one of those tools I'm still playing with a little bit myself. If you press and hold Alt or Option, you can delete those points. So it's like, I don't want that point there.
Show the difference between that and rotate, because I've had that question a few times. People will be like,
Yeah,
what is the difference between a bend and rotate?
So yeah, so rotating is doing just that. It's rotating from a specific point, where the bend is actually bending from a specific point. So maybe the wide wasn't a good example here. Let's do this. Let's come back here. So let's go 1, 2. So here it's trying to rotate that mesh as best as it can from this first point of contact, where in the bend itself, there we go, it's actually bending from that. So rotating is more like an overarching arc. It's trying to take this point, and really rotate over itself. Bend is actually bending it. Think of bending as like a fold, and it's kind of folding that into place. And the thing here that we were trying to do is make sure that when we bend something, Ian breaks everything. When we bend something, I am on the wrong one. There we go. There we go. When we bend something, that point, we're trying to find the middle and then fold that in, if that makes sense. So see here, it's now finding the middle of that point as best it can with the geometry, and then it's folding it or bending it. Where with the rotate section, it's going to give it just a little bit. It's going to be different. It's trying to rotate, like 360-degree type thing. So see, it's just a different
more stretching when you're rotating as well.
You do. Yep. So that would be the difference. Again, pressing and holding Alt or Option if you're on Mac, and then touching that point will go ahead and delete those points. So ZModel for iPad, I mentioned it earlier, so we are working on that. That is something that I'm allowed to say. We are working on it, and next year, keep your eye out. We understand. Again, this is why the rebuild, understanding that ZBrush for iPad is a rebuild, is because there's so many things that we need to do to get it to work correctly. So, and that is why, if you've tried, and I know some of you have, and I'm looking at some of you, you know who you are. I know you've taken ZModeler from desktop and put it in the iPad, and you're like, that did not work. You're right. It does not work. It does not work the way you think it would. So yeah. So I know you've tried it, and that's fine. That's fair. I understand. I love hard surface ZModeler and the Gizmo. Those are like the two things that makes all of my hard surface happen. And believe you me, I know. So we're working on that. Very cool. Very cool. All right, everybody. That is going to be wrapping up the stream. We went a little bit over, but I think it was super important. Thank you, Rodolfo, for joining and showcasing the iPad stuff. Big things are to come for 2025 and 2026. So again, the project manager, who's Paul Gabriel, you guys known him. He's been in this seat for a long time, and I know he misses being here in this seat, but he's off hearing what you've said and trying to implement everything that we can, plus also doing what ZBrush has done always since the dawn of its inception, and that's pushed the bar of what an industry standard means. ZBrush changed the game industry, the toy industry, the jewelry, the film, blah, blah, blah. It's changed almost every industry it's touched. And our plan is to evaluate how we move forward, especially in light of other things that are coming around and how people use these tools. So we appreciate all the support, love, and care. Trust me, I came from the community, and you guys have embraced myself and Rodolfo, and we love it. And we always love the community. So thank you for being such an amazing community, somebody to always come to and just share art, share work, share workflows, and be able to sit here and showcase what's coming in the future. So thank you guys. This is pretty much my last stream as far as I'm aware of it. No, actually, that's not true. There's one more stream coming up. We're not ready to announce it yet, but this is the last update one for ZBrush for 2024, moving into 2025. So, Rodolfo, do you have any last words you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Well, I also like to thank everyone. I mean, I as you said, I've been part of the community since I've first tried ZBrush, but yeah, it's been a wonderful ride. It's been a heck of a year for me and for you, I'm sure. And I'm super excited for what's to come. I mean, the future of ZBrush is looking bright, and you guys just wait and see. You're gonna see, like, you're gonna get blown away because we have so much stuff, like so many. We have ammo being built, like we have a huge cannon that's called ZBrush, and we're building ammo for it, and it's gonna be awesome, man. Like, I can't wait for 2025. Like, very excited. I'm pretty sure, like, Paul would say the same thing because he said it multiple times.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be an awesome 2025.
Yeah. Here, Ruka, this is a super important question. If we buy the subscription deal, will it stack on my current subscription? That's a great question. I believe that's a support question. I wish I knew the answer off the top of my head. I believe that information may be correct, but the best thing to do is before you hit purchase, just put in a quick support ticket. I'll see if I can find the answer myself and then maybe push it in my Discord or something like that. Just so we know. But I will research that for the next time. Apologies for not knowing the answer, but logically, that makes sense. But I want to get you the correct answer.
Yeah.
So. All right, guys, that is it. Thank you so much, everyone. And we will see you guys, well, next year. So take it easy, and we'll talk to you guys later.